In a developing story, Meta faces scrutiny as a parliamentary committee might summon the tech giant over CEO Mark Zuckerberg's controversial remarks on Indian elections. Zuckerberg's assertion that incumbents globally, including India, lost their 2024 elections has sparked a huge political firestorm. Now labelled as misinformation, the statement contradicts the factual outcome of the elections. Let's listen in to what BJP leaders had to say today.
तो ये जो बयान है जुकरबर्ग का, ये अपने आप में अलार्मिंग है। इस तरह का बयान ये दिखाता है कि वो भारत के लोकतंत्र पे वो इंटरफेयर कर रहा है और पूरी दुनिया को वो गलत जानकारी देके गुमराह कर रहे हैं कि हम जो है भारतीय जनता पार्टी या एनडीए लूज की है। तो इस कारण से 140 करोड़ लोगों का रिप्रेजेंट करती है भारतीय संसद। हम मेटा के लोगों को बुलाएंगे, उनको माफ़ी मांगनी पड़ेगी और नहीं तो उनके ऊपर जो भी कानून सम्मत कार्रवाई होगी वो हमारी कमेटी रिकमेंड करेगी। 20 से 24 के बीच में किसी एक दिन उनको हम बुलाएंगे।
Well, joining us now, the senior BJP leader and Supreme Court lawyer, Nalin Kohli. Nalin, Mark Zuckerberg had said, these were his exact words, 2024 was a very big election year around the world. And in these countries, India had elections. The incumbents basically lost every single one. There's some sort of a global phenomena, whether it was because of inflation or economic policies or to deal with COVID, etc., etc. Why does the BJP find it particularly shocking that these remarks would be made by an IT leader in the world?
Why shouldn't the BJP or any Indian not find it shocking? It is shocking. It's unacceptable. First, it's factually absolutely incorrect. Second, it's a gross overgeneralization by someone who's now talking about getting into the news media. There are issues related to these big corporations in terms of whether they can influence elections or not. Have we forgotten that there was an argument and a concern several years ago with an organization called Cambridge Analytica? And then there were questions raised with regards to them. So this just raises that, here is a corporation head. It's a pretty powerful corporation globally. Talks about information, talks about freedom, talks about, getting the right thing across to communities in the world. He, sitting in the world's oldest democracy, does not know that the world's largest democracy, that is India, elected not just its incumbent government, but elected its incumbent government well. And that government is here for the third term.
So
it just basically runs down the work done during COVID. So it is something to be agitated about, and quite correctly. And this also raises another question legally, that they are constantly, these corporations, and Facebook being no exception, is on a regular basis in courts to raise questions about their concerns with data or their concerns with expectations from the government and the IT bills, etc., in terms of requirements of them to ensure that there is no misinformation. The head of that very organization is so misinformed or is deliberately misinforming is a matter of concern.
Is a simple apology enough?
I don't know. That's for parliamentary procedure to decide. If he's summoned by a parliamentary committee, he has to comply with that procedure. We run by rule of law. And I can only just tell you, if rule of law requires his presence, he should comply with it. That is now for between the committee. If it so goes ahead and issues that requirement, calls him, then he has to comply with it.
Should he choose not to come to India or appear by video conference? I don't know if that's allowed in our system. How does that place Meta in India?
Well, that is, I think, presumptuous to really go that far. Let us just see what is it. Let's not forget that the country's IT minister, Mr. Vaishnav, has put out a tweet, put out the factually correct position, pointed out the work done by Narendra Modi's government during the COVID period, which is the basis of what we believe is the work done in that led to a clear, the people of India voting again for the government for the third time as Prime Minister Modi heading it again. So I think all of that is there. Now, with regard to Facebook's future, that's a corporation. I mean, either Facebook or you, me, anybody else cannot say we are above Indian law. There's that whole phrase, when in Rome, you do as the Romans do. I mean, basic rule of law in any country and the world's largest democracy like India is that the rule of law will prevail. That's all. Now, if someone decides not to prevail or not to comply with the requirements of rule of law in India, with a presence in India, then I think whatever are the requirements under law, they will take shape.
Do you believe this was a deliberate effort at disinformation?
Well, there's no clarification to the counter saying that it's not a deliberate effort.
This isn't the first time that Twitter has, been called by Parliament. I remember in February 2019, Parliament called them to discuss safeguarding citizens' rights on social media platforms. They were called in 2020 to appear before a Parliamentary Standing Committee on IT. It's not necessarily a very easy relationship that India has had with Meta, right?
Maybe the way to look at it is exactly the reverse. Perhaps Meta is not seeking an easy relationship with India, because after all, the requirements of rule of law, and you can't say that I will be over and above the legal requirements of the country where you would have an office or you would have a presence. Well, let me ask it in a different way. Would Meta say that they will not comply with the laws of the United States of America? Or let's say China as another example. You can't say that we will treat India as an exception because perhaps we believe that the rule of law in India is not up to the level that we like it to be. It can't be like that, no?
Nalin, it does have to be said that there is past precedent of Mark Zuckerberg publicly apologizing for several issues, privacy breaches, data misuse, allegations of platform misuse, etc., etc. And very often these responses have been, these apologies have been in response to public or governmental pressure. So are you, heartened potentially by the fact that there may well be an apology or some sort of clarification?
Let us see, Vishnu, because, I really, in fairness, cannot speak on his behalf or his organization's behalf, whether it is personally or as the person who heads the organization. I can't. It won't be correct for me also to make that presumption that Mr. Zuckerberg is going to apologize or not apologize. That, I think, time will answer. What we certainly know is his statement is inaccurate, is false, is incorrect, is a gross overgeneralization, and is also, if I may use the word, demeaning to the world's largest democracy. I mean, after all, India is the world's largest democracy. The people of India, and we pride ourselves with the fact that, it's a functioning democracy where people exercise their vote freely, fearlessly. And our election commission does a spectacular job about it. Political parties participate across the spectrum. And after COVID, let's not forget that the Narendra Modi government did an enormous amount of work. I mean, no country in the world has given the number of free vaccines as India has, 2.2 billion. It's a huge figure. Every Indian vaccinated, twice over, in some cases, a third booster shot. Let's not forget that India assisted and actually exported vaccines to other countries. We did our bit globally. We brought back citizens from different parts of the country. We brought back citizens of other countries also while we were transporting our own citizens. We came up with the Atmanirbhar Bharat program to ensure that industry could, in that difficult times, come over. We cared for the poorest of the poor by ensuring that 80 crore people get food grains on a monthly basis, which continues even today. We ramped up our hospital facilities, ICUs, ventilators as never before. We didn't have even manufacturing, as I remember, of PPEs or masks on that scale. That was done. I mean, to just grossly wipe it away with a single brush of a statement or a sentence does deserve us to raise it and raise our concern in an appropriate manner, which I think what Mr. Nishikant Dubey has done. All right. And as a parliamentarian, and the Honorable Minister for IT has flagged it instantly.
All right, Nalin, we leave it there with you. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm now joined by Advocate Aniket Nikam. He's also a spokesperson of the BJP, NS Napinai, Jiten Jain, and Nandan Mishra. Mr. Mishra, let me come to you first. Is the BJP overreacting?
I think they claim that Mark was inaccurate is very correct. And I think he should not have painted everyone in the same brush, The fact that he was talking about incumbents and not being able to handle tough times and public's trust eroding in the incumbents. I think he should not have quoted India because he's not named any country. He said India and others. So I don't think he should have done that. He should have taken other names firstly, and he should not have taken name of India. So that's very, very important. I think from that perspective, it's totally inaccurate. And I think The apology is well in place, but I think we should leave it there. We should see how they respond to that. I think he will, I'm sure that being a responsible corporation who has a very large, maybe the largest active base here, they would respond with an apology because they are inaccurate. Having said that, maybe the real question is why they are removing the fact check thing. I think that is where the initial conversation should have been. But I think this another thing that is coming up, it's might be an issue, different issue that's being raised right now. Yeah.
And it's Napinai, I think that's an important point that Mr. Mishra mentions, that Facebook's decision or Meta's decision to have a relook at the entire fact check business, and on something like this, it comes at a time when you've got a profound mistake which has been made by none other than Mark Zuckerberg. How would you look at that potential move by Meta to get rid of fact checkers, at least in the form that we know it, at a time when he makes this mistake?
Well, on a lighter note, Vishnu, I would say that probably if he had had his fact checkers around, he may not have made this mistake, right? So this may be actually a good basis for them to argue for their reinstatement. Well, we are talking about the fact-checking aspect only with the limited jurisdiction of United States at this juncture. We are not seeing this being extended particularly to places like UK and Europe where there is a mandate for fact-checking. In India, one could read the mandate into the intermediary guidelines in a way because you must exercise due diligence, and that due diligence extends to ensuring that hate speech, fake news, and disinformation, etc. are not hosted on your platform. So if you're not using fact-checking as a process, then you will have to look at alternatives. Is fact-checking something that everybody wants in India? I would say no, maybe not necessarily so. There has been a move by the government to bring its own fact-checking team and to have its fact-checking team's decision be implemented.
Okay.
And that has been stayed. So therefore, and it has been stayed on the ground that it may impact fundamental right of speech. So Meta could also argue saying that we stand on the same footing. But having said that, the balance that Meta will have to bring about is to ensure that it can still exercise due diligence and caution, irrespective of whether it has this fact-checking team or not.
Right.
And secondly, to merely rely on an assumption that there is bias from the fact-checking teams to disband it may be really specious, because it is your own team. You have selected and you have put in place the fact-checking team, and now you are raising an issue about it.
Okay.
The alternative or the better alternative would be to have in place a proper process that would ensure that a fact-checking team will work without that bias.
Okay, got it. Just half a sec. I just want to go across to Jiten Jain. Mr. Jain, Meta or Facebook earlier hasn't exactly covered itself in glory when it comes to several issues: the Cambridge Analytica scandal, the Senate hearing on child safety, the Beacon privacy issues, allegations of misinformation and election interference between 2016 and 2018. There have been lots of problems, accusations at some level about interference. Do you think that this was interference or a one-off mistake made by Mark Zuckerberg? A pretty strange mistake, but a mistake nonetheless.
No, Vishnu, I agree with you. But if it was a mistake, an apology and a clarification would have been offering within a couple of hours. I mean, he is not an ordinary guy. He's the CEO of Facebook, Meta, where 40% of the user base and revenue around that comes from India. So he could not have made this remark about India. And India is not like Pakistan or Niger or, Mali, where you're looking at coups, or, or Pakistan, where there is, some sort of fake elections happening. This is India. I mean, our election process, our election results are known worldwide. There are, and that too in a country with a population size of more than 1.4 billion people. You can't be speaking with that without any political motives. Now, if you look at the overall conduct of this guy, I would say he's a hypocrite whose own stand is full of contradictions, and their policies in last 6 years have been nothing but political convenience. And I'll tell you how. These people banned a sitting US president on the charge that he had put out some tweet which may have instigated violence. That was nothing but a political protest, and that sort of protest happens every day in India on Jantar Mantar. The same very guy in that same very year allowed Taliban to have official accounts, the very same people who killed people, who paraded suicide bombers in the football fields. and they were allowed on Twitter. The same very guy refused to block any account in India on terms of, any rationale when it came to red for protest, when people were, spreading misinformation by running fake accounts from my side. There was no stand on, those accounts in terms of fact-checking them. We should just let me complete. Now, third, see, their ban on Donald Trump and this Twitter and the Jack Dorsey and Google, they all banned a sitting US president for life. And they said that we will never revert it.
Yes.
As soon as they smelled political waters were changing, as soon as they smelled that Donald Trump might be coming back to power, all of these people suddenly formed some panels and they revoked the ban. And very day they realized that Donald Trump is back in the presidency after results. All these people have been paying silent visits to Mar-a-Lago, apologizing. The fact-check teams in US are gone, not across the world, only in US.
Right.
Because these same very people did not fact-check Hunter Biden's laptop. They allowed Democrats a free run while doing complete election interference. And this is the same guy who's not accused by Nishikant Dubey or Nalin Kohli. He was accused by Donald Trump last year, saying, and I'll quote him, that if you do what you did in 2020 by manipulating public opinion, if I win, I will ensure that you spend the rest of your life in jail.
All right, so serious questions on credibility over there.
Accusing Meta chief.
Right, hang on, Jitin, I need to keep the strike rotating. I have only a finite period of time and I'm running out short on time here. Aniket, Nikam, let me come to you first. Would the BJP accept a simple apology?
Well, Vishnu, that is for the Parliamentary Committee to decide. But let me tell you, when one of the largest corporate in the world makes extremely reckless statements which are far from truth. Now, what assumes importance is that this man holds some position of responsibility. He has got huge social media presence. He has got followers across the world. And people will take him seriously, whatever he says. And the moment he starts uttering sentences and statements which are far from truth and which are factually incorrect, this assumes importance. And therefore, the Parliamentary Committee rightly has issued notice to him, asking him to clarify his stand.
All right. Okay, so let's see if he does. There's certainly not been an immediate apology or any immediate clarification. We'll leave it at that. Thank you all very much for being with us.